on that, and we had a nice, lengthy conversation. I think you'll find it of interest, and it will contribute towards information on the history of Honey Grove. I don't have the exact date of this interview, but it possibly is in the tape somewhere.
Your mother told me that, she says, Mary, I have a letter that your daddy wrote to my mother. Said it was a note. Says asking for, well, it says, she said, speak of it as a date. Said he didn't say he wanted the honor of her company to go somewhere or something. It was in the old-fashioned wording, you know. Well, she said, I wouldn't. Said, now I'm telling you this, but said, I'm not going to give it to you because she said, I wouldn't take anything in the world for it. I said, Mabel, this is the way I feel about that. I said, we have no one to leave it to, and my brother's not in more interest in that, and he would be in a white elephant. And I said, I'd rather you'd keep it because you have someone that will to leave it to. And she said, well, I don't think you were particularly interested when she was telling us
Not
that.
at the time.
And she spoke about it, said, well, I don't know whether John would be interested or not, but says, he'll fall heir to it all. So I'm so glad that you do take. But you have that note from my daddy to your grandmother.
Well, now that you mentioned, I think I remember reading that.
That's it. Well, it was a little thing. I sang a song up there.
In the archives.
Mm-hmm. Now, they tell me that. See, I don't remember anything about doing it, but they've told me that so much that and I made such a hit with it. I was just a child. I danced the chorus and sang the song. And what would you take from me, Papa? That's the name of the song. And I have the song in there. My mother kept that, and I found it. And I was just that as well.
Well, this maybe is not a very good question because it might lead to your age, but about when was that?
Well, I don't know. I just know I was just a little girl. Just a little girl. Oh, I imagine I was about, well, I wasn't in school. I imagine I was about 4 or 5 years old. And I had on a...
Where were you born, Miss Mary?
In this room.
Right here in this room?
Right here in this room.
And what was your mother and father's names?
Well, my mother's name was Houston. She was a great niece of Sam Houston's.
Well, now what was her maiden name, her full name?
Francis Houston.
Now what was your father's name?
George Washington Wells.
Was he born here?
No, my father was born in Missouri. And his mother was a Virginian, and his father was a New Yorker. And I told him that.
I assume that he moved to Texas probably as a young man.
Yes. And well, he went into the Confederate Army when he was 14 years old. He ran away and went into the Confederate Army. And he stayed until he had a great long scar across here that he got in the Battle of Murfreesboro. And, you know, he just couldn't hardly, he was so bitter, and he just wouldn't talk about it. He just couldn't talk about it. Oh, he was a Southerner from way back. I tell you, he was, you remember the Walter Myers that were here?
Just remember the name.
Well, I didn't know him, but I remember Miss Walter Meyer and Miss Emmy.
She had Mrs. Waltermeyer. She was a music teacher, wasn't she?
Yes, well, she married, her second marriage was Colonel Walter Meyer, and he was a colonel in the Northern Army, and you know my father wouldn't let me take music from him, and he wouldn't let me go there. He said, I don't want to hear of you being up there at the Walter Meyer place. And I knew better than to be there too.
Well, now, did your father come to Texas,
And he
soon-
was,
soon after the
his
Civil War?
mother, yes, his mother, they were in Paris, there's where he was. And then when he took his law degree, he got his license to practice law from, what's this, Maxey, from Judge Maxey. And he told me this, he said, you know, said, when I took my examination, said, they said, well, why did you go to Judge Maxey for? Says, he's the hardest man you could go to. He said, well, if he is, said, that's what I want. Says, if I know it, why, I'll pass. If I don't, why, he won't let me. He says, that's just the way I want it. But he passed all right.
Do you know when your mother and father married?
I have, one of these. This was made on a Xerox thing.
Yeah.
And that's, I have the original that was in the paper at the time.
Married at the Smith Hotel
Uh-huh.
on the evening of the 4th instant. Is that George W. Webs? You don't know when they were married.
Well, no, I
But just
don't.
about.
But it'd be just about, and I don't remember ever seeing it.
Do you remember where the Smith Hotel was?
No, I don't remember anything about Smith Hotel, but it was down here somewhere. That thing up there shows.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
picture.
Right. Mary, when you were a girl, who did you play with mostly? Who were your best friends?
Oh, that Robin's over here, and Bess, and well, Wayne when she'd come here, you know, and Sue. Now I tell you, there was Sue and
Was her maiden name Sue Ballinger?
no Sue Yarborough.
Oh, yeah.
Sue Yarborough.
Was her father T.E. Yarborough?
T.B.
T.B.
Yarborough.
What did he do?
Merchant. I always thought he was a banker, but I asked Sue one time, and I said, Sue, wasn't your papa in the bank? She said, no, he was a merchant. Well, I didn't know the parents, you know. We just little kids playing, and
Yeah.
and Mr. Walker, every time there was a merry-go-round come here, why, he'd get a bunch of tickets and he'd give them to us, and we would just ride that thing to death.
Now, you're talking about B.O. Walker.
Bill Walker.
Now,
Now, I didn't know any of the other Walkers.
was his father, B.S. Walker, still living when you were a
No,
girl?
I didn't know it. That was beyond my age.
When B.O. was, the times you're referring to, he built, the big house down
Yeah.
here, and they were living there.
That's where they were living there when they died, and Wash tore down and built those houses around there, you know.
Did you ever make any of the dances you used to have down there?
No, up there on the third
Right.
floor.
Yeah.
Oh, I should say, my, how we danced down there. Well, we just danced down there, and there was a pool table up there too.
What did they use for music,
Oh,
for the
Oh.
dances?
then you always could find a couple of neighbors that'd play.
What type of instruments did they play?
Guitar, mandolin and guitar.
Yeah.
That's what they had.
Uh,
I don't think they had a violin, but I think they played. And you remember Hale Bolton?
he died before I was born, but I know who you're talking about.
Uh-huh. Hale and Lawrence Bolton. There was a Lawrence, and there was some others. I didn't know them, but then I knew Hale, and he was he played quite a lot. He was one that, well, he didn't dance, and so he'd play.
The dances that you had on the third floor, were they, kind of formal, I mean, in dress
No,
and
just the
attire?
waltz and the foxtrot, same things we had, they dance now. You know, I was asked by Miss Dixie Black to talk to the FHA girls, and, I didn't want to do it, I didn't know what to say, and I was a little biased. I'd heard so many things about that young crowd, you know, kids up there, and I just thought, well, I better stay clear of such as that. I don't know them, and I just better don't know. But no, sir, she came down here, she said, no, she says that group up there, they think when you reach 60 years old, you ought to be in the rest home. And she says, I want you to talk about when you were as a teenager and went to school. And I learned the hard way. I said, when I'd come home from school, I'd have to go to the kitchen and help my mother, and I learned to cook that way. I said, when I wanted a dress, my mother would help, I would have to help make it. And I said, y'all are blessed by having a person well versed in these things and know how to teach you and give you the best of training. I said, I hope you appreciate it. And they'd smile, you know, and they said, well, what? And I told them about the school, that we didn't have plays, that we had pageantry and did things like that, but there wasn't very much, and they had the same studies that we had. They said, well, what did you do for recreation? When the questions commenced, she said, what did you do? I said, well, we had a glee club, and we had, so I didn't say anything like that. I didn't say anything about it until one of the girls, well, did you just sing all the time? I said, I looked at her, I said, I danced. Well, you just a wave went over the whole crowd, and then they commenced to clap. That's what they were wanting me to say. I said, when I was a little thing, very small, I said, Philip and, well, I didn't say who it was. I said, little friends of mine gave a masked ball. I went as Mary Queen of Scots. I said, I own a long white velvet dress with a beaded collar, and I said I had a small crown on. And I said, we had a dancing master to come here and teach us how to dance the minuet and the formal dances, things like that. And I said, from then on, we had dancing masters here. And I said, my father and mother were very eager for me to dance. And I said, they would always attend. And it was part of my life. And I said, and I have danced from then on to this day. I still danced until I was hurt. And, but you know, when they just listened to me, and when after it was over and I rose and they were all leaving, they crowded around me and just wanted to keep on talking. It was amazing, just amazing. But I enjoyed it, and I told Miss Black, I said, well, Miss Black, I said, this has been a revelation to me. I said, I had no idea. I said, they were just so polite and so interested, and I said, I just enjoyed every minute of it. And I said, I wish I could have told them more. I think I didn't get to tell them about old Bob, and I didn't get to tell them about, they used to take us on old Bob to join the train to go to Dallas to go to the fair. We used to do that. But, well, you know, I wear glasses to see off. I'm very nearsighted, and my notes were down on the table, and I couldn't get to see them, so I I had to, memorize, just tell it, and some things I didn't get to tell, but my land, I talked an hour.
Well, Miss Mary, in your, recollections of the school, I recently ran across some long ago articles in the Signal Citizen that I had cut out in 1934, and on the back was this long ago column, which dated 1899 and 19 something or other later, and it referred to the Wall School
Yes,
playing football with a public school.
my
That
brother
was a
went to
little-
Wall School.
Now, the Wall School was, where was it located?
Why, well,
Is it located where the present high school is?
where the elementary school is.
Where the
That's-
element, right.
That's where
Now,
it
where
was.
was the Walcott Institute?
Well, now, that's what I tried to find out.
Which school did you go to?
I
You
went
go
to public school.
You went to public school?
Yes,
All right, now.
I went to kindergarten. That's the reason I went beyond my class, what I should have gone with. I went to a kindergarten school, and then I went to a private school.
Well, now, what was the name of the private school?
Oh,
Or did it have a name?
Well, it didn't have a name. It's,
Well, now, why
I
did,
don't know.
some went to the public school and some went to the Wall School?
Yes.
What was the difference? I mean, why did some go to one place and some the other? Was it personal
Well,
choice, or was the Wall School a private school and cost money? Was that it?
Well, it did cost money. It was a Methodist school.
Oh, I see.
It was a Methodist school.
No,
They
no,
came
no.
here from Tennessee. And I think they're all dead except Rob, and he comes through here and he goes to see Franklin. He knew Franklin. And I believe he's the only one left. Oh, it was a big family. And, well, now you're talking about why they left. Well, my brother got into a fight with the teacher, and he had to leave the public school, so he went to Wall School.
That was a good reason.
That was a good reason.
Now, the Walcott Institute, was that?
Well, now, I don't know anything about
You
it. That
don't
was
know.
way beyond that time. I
Of
don't
course,
know.
I had
Walcott,
never been able to find out when it started and when it closed.
You know, families like the Walcotts and the Wellses and the Woods and the Yarbors and Prices, such as that, they were just, the families were well known to one another, and we as the kids, and that's all we knew. We were a selfish little group. You just can't say anything more about it. We would just played with one another, and that was all there was to it. And I just didn't know groups out away from that. That's just the way that we were raised,
Well, I was raised the same way, not for the same reason, but my mother always believed that her children should stay in their own backyard, and I actually never knew kids that lived in the west part of town.
Why? I
Didn't know their families.
there was a woman just kind of didn't like my sense. She told me about someone. I said, well, I don't remember that or that person. Well, she says you ought to. I said, well, maybe I ought, but I don't. And I just wouldn't tell her why, that I just stayed with my little group. I didn't know anybody else, and when we played together, we'd come down here, or we'd go to one of their houses, and that was that, we didn't mix with anybody, and I didn't know anybody. And that is the way my father and mother wanted, that is the way their parents wanted. I guess it was selfishness, all right, but then...
Back to the dances that you had up on the third floor of the Walcott home. was it not the custom in the summertime for the girls from other towns like Paris and Bonham and even further away to come in the summer and visit, and that was a big social?
I should say was.
Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, not only that, and some of the boys would say, you know, they had traveling salesmen quite a bit then, and they had the old city hotel. What's the city hotel? What's the one called City Hotel?
Well, they had 2 or 3 hotels at the
It
time.
was a hotel, and they would come here, you know, and they'd say, so-and-so's here, says, you want us to go down and get them? Of course we did, and we'd have music, and we'd dance up there. Whoa, we did that all the time, just all the time. Now, I think there's 1 or 2 Sioux didn't dance up, people didn't approve of it, you know, but Bess did, and of course I did. I've been dancing ever since I left that island. I'll dance all my life. and not only the waltz and the one-step and the foxtrot, but I danced some fancy dances. And I told one of the nigger students up there, she's sitting there just listening to me. I said, you know, I was, speaking about dancing, I was in a little play. And it was the old man was coming back home after wandering around for a long time, and all the little children ran out to play and danced for him. I said, and I was played one of the parts of the little children. I said, and I went down among your people, and I said, your people taught me how to clog dance. And I said, that's the way I learned it. And I said, I know some of those clog dances yet. And I said, and when we danced, we clogged. Well, the little girl, she was just so tickled to death to know that, you know. And they all were interested in my clog dancing. It was, I really had a good time with them.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
I did.
Miss Mary, who were the leading merchants around town? Can you recall when you were growing up?
Well, I don't know, Bertha. The Prices were the leading merchant, and
Who had the
Ware, Mr. Ware, he had a big store. I don't remember, but I know the Wares had a...
Who had the drugstore? I thought you ought to remember that because the drugstores had the fountains and everything.
Yes, Mr. Brickeen. Mr. Brickeen and Mr. Evans, Murray and Evans. That is one. And well, Murray and Evans is one of the. Let me see, who were they? Mr. Brickeen was one too. He was a druggist. Corner, and I can't think of the name of the drugstore, but there was one up there. I can't think what that was. It was afterwards a bank, the State National.
Yep.
You know, we had 3 national banks here. One up there, one State National, and the Planters. And that State National took part of that drugstore, but I can't remember the name of the drugstore. Where Clayton's is now.
Yeah. Did your father have buggies and surreys?
Yes, he had one.
Would he have a buggy or a surrey?
Buggy. And, well, my father rode horseback a good deal. He liked to ride horseback, and my mother rode horseback too. And, but he had his horse, and my brother had a horse. I was the only one who couldn't get within 10 feet of a horse. And, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. They just seemed to think I was a Dresden China doll, I guess. that I couldn't do it. But my brother's horse, I remember, kind of a pony called, his name was Button. And you know what? He was quite a tease, and the Williamsons lived down here, and he was he teased all the girls.
Now, where did the Williamsons live?
Where that, you know, that big old, the Whitleys bought it, and
Yeah.
that was the Williamsons built the thing. And they lived there, and they had that
Now, which
iron
Williams?
fence.
Was that T.F. Williamson?
No,
or
that
his?
wasn't, that was his brother, Billy Williamson, W.A. Williamson.
W.A. Williamson
Uh-huh.
built that house then.
Uh-huh, and
You have any idea about when that house was built?
no, I have no idea.
That was one of the things I wanted to ask you about.
Well, it was, before the one down there, it was built before the one down there where, well, I think that,
Before the Galbraith house? You know, the big Galbraith
no,
house.
no, wait, what, no, it was after that they built it. It was right across the street, who Cheney? And the Cheney that owned that and sold it to this fellow Smith, Ron Smith.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that was built afterwards. That was, they had a gate, Ms. Williamson and Edna were upstairs. And this Button, I'll tell you, this horse, my brother rode that down there, and he said, Edna, come out here, I want to talk to you. She said, I'm not going to do it. She said, I'm not going to come down there. She said, I want to show you how smart my horse is. He said, that horse doesn't have got any better sense than to do what you want him to do. Said he's not smart. And they just fussed around about it. Ms. Williamson was upstairs listening and laughing. She said, he said, Ms. Williamson, make Edna come down here. I want to show her how smart my horse is. So Edna had to come. She made Edna. All the mothers would always do what my brother wanted them to do, you know. So Edna went down there. She said, now show off your horse. He said, he had a way that you could touch one side of his neck and he'd do his head this way. And on the other side, he would do this way.
Yeah. Shake his head or a nod.
Uh-huh. So he said, ask him a question. No, I'm not going to ask him anything, says you talk to him. He says, Button, does Edna love me? Button said, yes. He said, do I love Edna? Button said, no, it made her so mad she didn't die. She picked up rocks, and Miss Williamson was up there just dying off laughing. That's the kind of fellow he was.
Miss Mary, do you remember what to me is the Fielding home next to where I live now? Mr. Trout built that house.
People named Ward live there now?
Yep.
Uh-huh. I don't remember when it was built, but I remember that it was.
Mr. Trout built it. Do you remember that Trout family? Is that Catherine's grandparents?
Yes.
Do you remember them?
No,
You wouldn't remember them.
No, I don't
Well, now, was some of the Trout family living there when you were a girl, or do you recall?
No, I don't remember. You know, my father's a lawyer. You knew that.
Yeah.
And he had cases, and he had one, I guess he didn't approve of old Mr. Trout. And I think he was quite a character from all I've ever heard. And I thought he was awful. And there's another place I was forbidden to go. I couldn't have gone if I'd wanted to. And I don't know too much. They didn't have anybody. See, just as I said, was in my little group, and I didn't know anybody out like that. And of course, Calvin Trout, the Trout girl's father, was a son, and Mr. Luther Trout, I don't know whether you all remember.
Oh, yeah, sure.
They were all Trouts, you know. But My father thought the old man was just the scum of the earth. Now, that's just what he thought. I tell you, the little bunch that we went with, we had to stay together because I tell you, we were restricted. But we had,
You told me, on this afternoon, when we were talking on the telephone, that you didn't remember a whole lot about Honey Grove in its early days, but you did remember some of the things that your parents had told you.
yeah.
Can you tell me any of those things that you recall?
You know, I remember when we were talking over the telephone one time, and I told you about my brother and Tank Holt.
Yep.
My brother never, he just didn't like the time to sit down and study. He just didn't want to do it. He wanted to be out playing ball and such as that, you know. So, and my father would say, Henry, you must have an education. Now is the time for you to have an education. And now is the time to get it when you're young. Says you can't have anything. Says the time will come when you're sorry. And he gave him all these lectures, you know, about education. And tell them about it. It'd take that. If he wanted to get rich, he'd have to be smart to get rich, you know. Well, you know, old man Tank Holt, he didn't know how to write. He couldn't write his name. That's what I've always heard. And, but he amassed a fortune. Of course, it was just in an early day, and by getting cattle and land, I guess. Anyway, that's the way I'd always heard it. And I guess my brother had too. Anyway, that was the lecture my father gave him. And every time my father would tell this and laugh about it, he'd give my brother one of those lectures when he had probably skipped and not gone to school like he should. And told him, he says, you have to have an education to make money. That's the way he tried to appeal to him. He said, well, Papa, Mr. Tank Holt, he said he couldn't write, and says he had a fortune. My father always laughed about it. He said he'd always hush me up. And that was a fact.
Do you remember any of your teachers from school?
Yes. Oh, yes. Miss Lily Biggs and Miss Fanny Smith, she was just, we were all afraid of her. And you know, Miss Annie. And Miss Daniels taught up there. Mm-hmm.
About what years was that about?
I don't know. She taught my brother. I remember him being on a visit.
Well, now, what you would call present-day high school, about when did you get out of it? What year did you graduate?
Oh, let me see.
Roughly.
19 and... I don't know, 19, 10, 11, 12, somewhere. I just don't know for sure. I'll have to look it up. But there's some...
You don't happen to have any of your diploma or anything, do you?
No, I don't have my diploma. But I went to school, went off to school in Stanton, Virginia, Mary Baldwin College, and I have certificates from that that'd go. I don't know where they are either. You know, we moved our things, and things got lost.
Yes.
So I don't know where they are. But I know about being in plays farther after school, but I don't remember when they were.
Yeah.
But this, when the Walls came here, they had quite a reputation as educators. They came here from somewhere in Tennessee. I don't know why they ever came here, but they did. And that old school, I think that went back into quite a long way. That it was Wall School, and then it was.
That was clear back in the mid 1800s, wasn't it?
Yes, it's
Before
way
the Civil
back
War?
there. It's way back there.
Yeah.
And it was before the Walls came here. It was a school, but I don't know who had it. That was too far back. That was. Seems to me that I just don't know.
When you were growing up, did the younger people have lots of picnics, and
No, yes, we were always having picnics.
where did you
And-
go?
Why, down there, back of the house where it is now, Mary Virginia's house, down in that valley there and that pasture, we'd go down there nearly every weekend.
Well, that was a walking place then.
Yeah, to walk the place. But it was, no houses around there
Right.
then.
Well,
Just back of,
of course, he owned all that
yes.
property there.
That's where we'd have our picnics. Yes, I should say we did. And, and we'd have, and out here to this, quarry,
Blue Hole?
Blue Hole. We'd go out there for moonlight picnics. Yes, we did a lot of,
Did you go
we had
wagon-
good times in
Wagon
those.
rides?
Yes, well, hay ride.
Hay rides on wagons.
Mhm.
Yeah. How many wagons would go at a time?
No, I don't know. We just get on a hay ride. And we'd sing, and we'd have the nicest time. John, they don't know how to have any
Oh, I
good
know
times.
that. That's right.
They don't have good times anymore.
Don't know anything about it.
Not a thing. They don't know what fun is. Another thing we used to do, we'd go out to this out there at old Wheeler place, somewhere out there. I don't know just the layout, but then there was a cemetery out there, and that was quite a trip to go out there and read
Read the monument?
monuments. That's what we'd do, and we'd have watermelon feast, and then go watch for read monuments, such as that, things like that. Oh, we really had fun. Just had a lot of good times. In just a fun-loving, happy way, and everybody in a good humor, and everybody having a good time, and everybody knew one another, and we just had good times.
Who were the boys that you ran around with?
Well,
You mentioned some of the girls.
yeah, Ivan Irvin and Tom Taylor, Joe Kendall. I was trying to think of a picture that I saw. Some of those names. Ivan and Tom, Joe. And Edna married Tom.
Edna who?
Edna Williamson that lived down here in this house I was speaking of.
I married Tom who?
Tom Taylor lived right over there in that house, that big two-story house right over there. And his daughter lives in Oklahoma City now. And, of course, Joe Kendall, his father was
Professor Kendall.
professor of the schools here. see anymore. Some of those that went to the Wall School, but I never did. I always stayed till I finished there at this school, but a lot of them left the public school and went to that one.
You mentioned old Bob,
Yes, good
tell me
gracious.
something, tell me, do you recall who the engineers were?
Why, there was the engineer was that's where they got the name, Bob Russ. Russ and Mr. Porterfield was the conductor.
What was Mr. Porterfield's first name?
Mola.
Mola, it's an unusual name.
It is, and big fat man, and he bought land on out there at this, where he could use the train to take his grain out there and hay and such as that. And it was quite a joke. Everybody knew he did it, of course, and it didn't make any difference. They didn't care either, but then he did. And Bob Russ was the engineer, and they had a play here, a home talent play one time, and they had a girl visiting here that had been on the stage. She was good too, and they had skits, you know. And she came in dragging a toy train about that long, just pulling it, you know. Oh, she did it. They said it was just wonderful the way she did. And she came in dragging that. When she got the center of the stage, she turned around, she put her hand and says, "Hi, Bob Ross. Stop there. I got some corn to sell." It just broke down my house.
Do you remember who managed the Roundhouse?
No. In these pictures,
See, they had a foreman for the Roundhouse too.
yes, in these pictures that Stuart Rowan's wife sent me, I sent them right on to this man that was getting up this book. And I think he must have gone to see her about it, because I didn't hear anything more from him or her either. But I noticed one that he was in the picture before there was a lot of pictures of old Bob. I told her, I said, there's a man writing a book in Austin, and he wants to know about old Bob. And she just sent me everything. She just cooperated just as much as she could, you know.
Do you know what the fare was for Ladonia?
No, I don't.
I'd guess it's probably a dime.
Probably so. I just
I
don't
don't
know.
imagine much more than that. How long did it take to get to Ladonia? I've always heard that they're liable to stop a half a dozen times.
Why did anybody get on now? And all the grain and the hay had to be all pitched off, you know. That's from Mr. Porterfield's farm. And I remember that when my mother, when I'd come home from school and I wanted to go anywhere. Well, now when you hear old Bob come in, why you come on home. I think it must have been 4 o'clock. I just don't know. But I remember I asked Miss Willie Green was living then, and I asked her about it, and I think she had some pictures. I don't know what became of them. But she said that she had some pictures, and she said old Bob made 4 trips, 2 in the morning and 2 at night. That's afternoon, during the day. And her husband was worked there. I don't know what he did. But Stuart was a ticket agent. His father was before him, and then Stuart. And gave his figure look just like Stuart. And but why, I've heard people come here from quite a distance, and they said, well, what about this old Bob? Goodness, he had quite a reputation. It was just,
What about in the days when the automobiles first came in? Did that create quite a bit of stir?
yes, yes, it did. And I remember that, the first one that I knew that I,
Colt bought the first one.
did he?
I don't know, I just, in the back of my mind, I
No,
think
well,
Frank
could have
Colt was
been.
one of the first.
But Gene Irvin, that was Will Irvin, you know, lived down at a great big old house that Seal owns
Yeah,
now.
on, Market Street.
Yes, right down this street. And, now that was the first one that I was in.
You don't recall what kind it was?
No, I don't have an idea, but I remember this. When we were in it, and somebody was in front of us and kicking up a lot of dust. And I remember Gene said, well, we don't have to take anybody's dust. And when we just went, oh, goodness, I held on to the streets, the seats, scared to death. I remember that day. We were small. We were small. We were piled in that car. And it didn't have any, you know, it's high up and it didn't have any doors here, as I remember it. But it was a pretty good sized car. But he was the first one that I knew anything about. Tank Holt. I never did know him.
Who were some of the big farmers around when you were young?
I don't remember any except Mr. Joe Goss.
Yeah.
And Mr., I'll tell you another one too, the one was his partner. He was the one that my father liked. Who was Morgan?
Yeah.
Mr.
Well,
Will Morgan.
You don't remember any of them around close to Honey Grove?
No, I don't remember. I didn't like that. The Floyds, I'd see the Floyds when I go to my father's office, I'd see them.
Do you remember any of the rock buildings being built here in town?
No.
Stone buildings uptown?
No, I don't. I tell you,
Of course, I know most of them were built back, too far back, you couldn't remember them, but I just wondered.
No, you're kind of like Uncle Hent Smith. You don't remember him, do you?
Yeah.
Do you? Well, he was one, he'd just talk, and then he'd say, you remember that, don't you? And when he'd tell, it'd be way back, you know, and just to help him along and get along with the story, I'd say yes.
Yeah.
And I did that one time, and he said, Mary, you remember that, don't you? I said, yeah. He said, now you don't either. I said, that happened before you were born. Oh, no, he was a character.
What did he do?
Farm. He had a farm out here. I don't know what,
East of town.
who bought that. Meyer had it.
Well, they still have it. It's still in the family.
Is that right? Well, I didn't know. I think it was a good farm, wasn't it? I think it was. And does June own it now?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that. Is Vera still doing all right?
Yeah, she's doing pretty good.
Well,
What about Mr. Bob Pine?
oh, I don't think he's a power. He
Uh,
wouldn't know anything. He was just a...
No, I was just asking you about him. You knew him real well, didn't you?
Oh, yes, Franklin's husband. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I knew him. He was a cotton man here.
Well, I remember him, of course, as a cotton man. I wondered if he'd ever done anything before that, or a different occupation.
I don't know. All I knew, he married. Just knew him. I didn't know him until he married Franklin.
Yeah.
I just didn't know him.
Which Ms. Bertha Irvin, now, which was Lace Irvin her husband?
No, Ivan Irvin.
Ivan, yeah.
Ivan was
the
his
husband.
son, you know, the only son they had. And they
All right,
lived up there
all right,
at the
now,
bakery.
Lace Irvin, that was her father-in-law, is that
That's her
correct?
father-in-law.
And he was a merchant.
Mm-hmm. Hardware merchant.
Right.
He had quite a, as I remembered, he had a nice hardware store.
That was S.L. Irvin, wasn't
Yes.
it? S.L. Irvin.
Uh-huh. Yes, sir. Well, I declare I've forgotten his initials, but that's what they is.
You know why I can remember?
Uh-uh.
I have a legal farm cabinet. It has probably 40 or 50 drawers in it. Ms. Irvin used it throughout her business career as an insurance farm cabinet, and it was sold by her father because it's got S.L. Irvin, got the plate on it. And it has a key, it has some side doors with a key, and it has the original cloth shipping tag still on that key.
Well, you know that went to.
But she just forgot.
Uh-huh.
You see, I bought her insurance agency,
Well, I knew
And,
you did.
and I got everything with it, including that.
Uh-huh. Well, that's what
Well,
she
that
told me. She said,
actually-
you know, I don't know where the,
That thing was so big and so heavy that it was nearly impossible to move. It weighs hundreds of pounds.
But she told, well, it's been quite a while ago, before she went to the nursing home. She said, I don't know whatever became of that.
Well, I have it in my office. Of course, that was part of the, I bought it when I bought her.
Yeah, well, I
She just
see why
forgot.
you would, of course.
She just forgot.
She forgotten it. But she told me when, just a few days ago, I asked her how she was. She said, why, Mary, she said, I'm feeling better and I don't know when I have felt this well. She said, I just feel fine.
Oh, the Robinett house over here, that was Jim Robinett, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Was it J.H. Robinett?
J.H. Robnick.
You see, I've got a pretty good memory. I never did even know him.
Is that so? He was
He died before I
in
did.
the insurance.
Is that what he did?
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you now, we first,
Did he build this house?
no, the original house was given to him by the woman who raised him from a boy that took him to raise him, and that was Mrs. I don't know what, she was a Walcott, she married a Walcott, but she is a sister to Ms. Wash Underwood. And she was in a rolling chair, that's the only way I remember her. She's a little scrawny thing as I remember her. But she is Wash Underwood's grandmother's sister, Miss Wash Underwood. And she raised Mr. Robnett and gave him that house when
Was
he
he an
married.
orphan?
Well, I guess he was. I just don't know, but there were some Robnetts over in, I know Beth said she had a cousin that was in Trenton, lived in Trenton, and one in Cooper, I believe it was. But I don't know too much about him.
Is that all he did, as far as you know, he was an insurance man?
That's all he did. Insurance and cotton. He bought cotton. I think he was quite successful at that too. And he owned a pecan grove down here, with what do you call them?
That was the Congo west of town.
Well, it's back here in the pecan grove back there, kind of back from where Glenn Shelton
lives back there in there, kind of between him and,
yeah,
in there, Pecan Grove there, well, I
Right.
think that's
right
where.
west of,
Yes.
back in there. That's what I know is the Jaeger property.
Yes,
See, when I was
that's right.
growing up, the Jaegers had that, and that was the Jaeger Dairy.
That's right, that's right. Well, I think the Jaegers
And
must have bought it from
And
him.
that was Mr. Robinson down back there.
Oh, we just have sacks, great big tote
Yeah,
sacks.
those trees are still there.
Are they?
They're huge trees.
Still producing, I guess.
I imagine.
Oh, there were great big pecans. We'd go down there, but it was posted, no one had put it in there. But I know he'd send some of his cotton friends in New York to pecans. And, lovely trees down there. Lovely
Are
trees.
you and, Aunt Bess about the same age, or would be?
I'm younger than Bess, but then I was the youngest one except for Nell Hockaday. She lives in San Antonio now with a son in San Antonio. She had an apartment, and then I was next. And we were very kind of close together. And then the others, there was 4 of us that were, there was Nell and myself and Bess and Edna. And then the other 4 were some several years older than we were, but we all ran together. We were all friends, and we just thought we were the only ones. We were a selfish little old group. I declare we were, I think of it now, my goodness, we were selfish.
In my teenage and even earlier days, we had circuses come to town pretty often. Did they come to town when you?
Yes,
What
yes.
circuses were there? Can you tell me
Oh,
something
we
about
had,
that?
let me see. Well, we had some good circuses come here. Oh, I ought to know. There's one that
Of course, the famous one was Ringling Brothers Wine
Ringling.
Bailey.
Well, I think they came here real early. Well, I don't know whether with or not, but there was another one. Seemed like that name ought to begin with a B. Which is a good circus. Oh yes, I know that always, cause they'd come up to my father's office and give him tickets, you know, his,
Where was your father's office?
up over the First National.
Where the First National is now?
Second floor.
So,
He had several rooms there. And, some of the furniture I
about
had.
when did he pass away?
19 and 26 or 7 somewhere.
Was he still practicing?
Yes, he had his office up there, and we had a wonderful library. I sold the library to Judge Gilbert of Dallas. He had, his health had, and he had sold, I thought he would never, but it got so much better that he wanted to go back into the practice of law again. And so he came and he bought the whole thing, just, he said, one of the finest libraries he ever saw. It was just covered the whole, he had a big library, all in calf-bound books. He wouldn't have anything unless it was calf-bound. A lovely library, expensive library. He, particular about it too. And he always told me he lost so many books that he lost 2 sets of Blackstone, and he told somebody, he said, now I'm glad for you to read my books, you can read them, but he says you stay in the office to do it. He said, I've lost so many. He said, you just come up here and do your studying here. And to.
You remember any of the doctors?
Yeah,
Tell me
yeah,
about some.
there was a Dr. Bedford. Oh, everybody loved Dr. Bedford and and Dr. Taylor, why, he was my baby doctor. Dr. M.A. Taylor, you know, Ms. Roy King's father,
I see.
and Laura Taylor, you remember Laura, her father. He was my baby doctor. Oh, I
Do you
do.
remember Dr. Page?
No, I don't. I know that old doctor, that Page home down there, but I don't remember anything about him. That was before my day, I reckon. I don't know. Do you remember him?
Barely.
Do you?
He
Well,
was
I
still
just
down
thought,
there when I was a little bitty thing. He was still there.
well, I didn't remember seeing him.
What about some names of some other doctors?
Well, there was a Dr. Reed. I don't know how long he was here, but his office was there. And there was a Dr. Joyner. Well, he wasn't anything. Dr. Joyner, he just wasn't anything. He was a doctor, but he just didn't know anything. And Dr. Vaughn, you know, did you know him? You knew Walter and
Walter.
Myrtle. Well, it was their father, Dr. Vaughn. He is very much beloved. Everybody loved Dr. Vaughn. And Dr. Bedford, I love it. I remember those so well. How many doctors now, John?
Well, we had a lot of professional people then, and we don't have that. Of course, they've all gone to big places.
Yeah. But then we need them in, I see where I've heard that the AMA, you know, are trying to.
Yeah, tell me about the liver stables.
Well, I don't know too much about it, except it did have liver stables.
Do you remember
But-
anybody who ran them, or the names, or what are the names of the stables?
Well, there's one of them that was Duke B. Trout, one that married Luther Trout. Her father owned one of them. And then
You know what her maiden name was?
Lane.
Yeah, she was Lane, right?
Well, anyway, my father had told my brother not to go around the liver stable. But my brother was so crazy about some of the men that he wasn't, he just wanted to be with those men. And so one day some men, and my father told me, said, no, I don't want you with those men. Says, you play with the boys. Says, you let those men alone. So one day some men, the chief of police and some sheriff or whoever it was came up to my father's office, told him that they had arrested these men for gambling, and they wanted to know if they could have my brother for a witness, and said we weren't going to summon him until we talked with you about and ask your consent to have him. He says, well, gentlemen, I've cautioned Henry about being there at this liver stable. So I've told him not to. Since he's disobeyed me. He says, now you do your duty. He says, I've told him not to. He says, now if whatever you consider your duty, you do it. He says, without reference to anything else. So they summoned them. So when it came to trial, my father was put my brother on the witness stand, and I think he took him down the line. I think he says he won't do it anymore. Says he had enough of it. He said it scared him to death. I was just thinking about that, how they used to train the children and make them mind. Now they just let them go anyway.
What about remember any of their policemen we used to have here?
No, I didn't know anything.
You didn't have too much to do with it.
No, I wasn't in on that. And yet I'd hear my father talk about it.
Well, I remember Dick Fisher, the name was Dick.
Yes, that's right,
And,
Dick Fisher.
he
Well, he wasn't,
was city police, I guess.
was he?
He was down there crawling when I was a little kid, but I don't remember.
Well,
What about the fire department?
Well, I didn't know too much about it. I
You remember that old horse-drawn fire equipment and stuff we had?
Well, I remember that we had one, but don't remember anything about it. The best bands in this part of the state.
Yeah, the municipal band,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mr. F.E. Clark up here was
Right.
in it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, he was
Mr.
the
Charlie
director.
P.K. You remember him?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I saw an old picture, but I'm glad they did.
I
didn't
even
know
played
him.
in that thing. I beat the drums.
Oh. I declare. Well, they said it was a good band.
Yeah, we'd have band concerts. In summertime, we'd have them, every week or two. I can't remember how often we had them. Maybe every Saturday night. Could have been.
Well, we used to have big picnics too.
Yeah. Did we have a bandstand here? I can't remember.
Well, I seems to me like there was a bandstand up on the square before that post office
I
was
imagine
built.
it was.
But
And it always had a bandstand out there.
yes, that's right. And we always had a band at the picnics. We had big picnics. They don't do that anymore.
How the world has changed, and it's difficult for me to think it's changed much for the better, if any.
Well, in a lot of ways it hasn't. It hasn't come up to what it ought to. And, you
Or do
know,
you have any of your older clothes here, or did you throw them away?
no, I don't have them. Those when we went to, we broke up and went to Oklahoma to be with my brother, and we lived up there 10 years, and we rented this, so we just,
Mother kept a lot of her clothes, even her wedding clothes.
is that right?
I don't have them, but my niece has.
Is that so? Oh, I wish I had, and I remember an old purse that my mother had, I wish I'd have had, and I had, now my grandmother, I have an embroidered taffeta cape thing. I have that. That was my grandmother's. Well, that's way over 100 years old. And I just keep it rolled, and then when there's a place in it, why I put it down with plastic to keep it together, you know. Grandmother's bell, and of course she handed it down to my mother, and they had it in the paper. They had it in the paper that it was my grandmother's bell, used by my grandmother 150 years ago. They got it all wrong. and my mother had it, and I told her, I said that it was my grandmother's bell, my mother used it, and, you know, I just, tried to tell them what it was all about, but they put it in the paper that it was used by my grandmother 150 years ago. I thought, oh well, doesn't matter.
Well, of course, that's possible, but not likely.
No, it wasn't likely. She could have, of course.
Yeah.
But the way it sounded in the paper was kind of funny.
Trying to make you sound old, weren't they?
Oh, they had me in the nursing home room.
That bell's cute.
Mm-hmm. Enjoy.
Do you have that bowling picture? Do you have a set?
No, just a bowling picture.
What other old things do you have?
Oh, I have some things in here. I think about things that my mother had an old cast, you know, of
Yeah.
different things we had.
We've got ours.
Mrs. Trainum, you know who she is.
Yeah.
She had one on the center table in the dining room, cast with pepper and salt and vinegar and whatever the thing had. She didn't use it, but she just sent
But
me.
when I was growing up, we used it. Now, see, when I was a kid, it was still fashionable to leave everything on the table and you covered it with a cloth.
That's
You
right.
never took anything off.
No, you put the cover over it.
Right.
Mm,
Kind of like a mosquito cloth.
netting.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't see anything wrong with doing that now. Of course, everybody nowadays thinks you have to put everything in the world in the refrigerator
Oh,
or you'll
yeah.
die the next
Oh
day.
yeah, oh yeah.
You have any idea when your house here was built, Miss Mary?
No, I don't. It's in there. I don't know when Mr. Piner bought it. Piner built it. And it's in that picture,
In that picture, I see.
1886. But now I don't know when it was. I have the abstract. It's in my bank
What
book.
did Mr. Piner do? That the name is Randy.
Piner. There's Piner Street out here. Well, he's just a pioneer here, I guess. I just don't know. I think Frank's mother knew the Piners. I think they had a home way out here. The old Piner place. But that's all I know. That's all I know about it.
How did you manage to have that picture?
Well, I'll tell you how I got that picture. When the Robnets were leaving over here, why, Ann Robnett, Bess had married, and Ann and I were exploring the attic, and we came across that picture. I said, "Oh, Ann, do you want this?" She said, "No, I don't." I said, "Well, do you mind my having it?" She said, "No, you can take it." And I brought it on home.
As far as I know, that's the only original.
That's the original picture that I know anything about.
I mean, there's nobody else got one that I know.
No, and your mother, we were talking about it, and she said, "Mary, I certainly hope that you'll leave this to the city and have it down to City Hall as its permanent home when you in your will." I said, "Well, I'm glad you spoke about it. That's what I'll do," and that's what I did in my will. That it'll be at my death. It'll go to the it's a permanent possession of the city of Honey Grove to hang in the City Hall.
I think that's very fitting.
Mm-hmm. I think it is too, that's where I'd like for it to have. You know, John, I love Honey Grove. I love every clodding around here. I love the environment. I think it's all beautiful, all out to the, Monkstown, out all through here. I think it's beautiful. And you know, this Mr. Porterfield that had this, there was a conductor, you know, yeah, he got very sick, and his brother, who was a juvenile judge in Kansas City, came here to see him, and they took him out out on 100. And they said he was just, I didn't hear him, but they said that he was just amazed at this country. He said, this is really the Garden of Eden. That's the way he expressed it, you know. He said,
Do you have any old pictures?
I did, I'll tell you, I had old pictures, but my mother, before she died, she returned them to the people to whom they belonged, you know.
One time on a telephone conversation with me, this is several months ago or maybe a year ago, you told me, I think that you had some tintypes
Yes,
and you
I
said
do.
you'd give them to me. You didn't know who they were.
No, I don't know. I have some that I can, well, I don't know who they are either. I don't know who they are, but they are tintypes.
Yeah.
And, I'll be, well, they're kind of packed away now, but
Yeah, I understand, but I'd like to have those sometime if you don't have anybody in particular.
no,
you think
I
like
don't
that.
know if anybody would want them. Those that I don't know now, I have some my father and my mother, that I wouldn't know it, but they told me that is who it was, and I think there's an uncle there. But, those I'd want to keep.
Oh, sure.
But then there's some there that I don't know who they are, but they're tintypes and they are interesting.
Well, I know from, people that come in the store, I have one or two little tintypes in there, little tiny ones, and they're fascinated with them. And I'd like to have some more to put in the store.
Well, all right, I'll just turn these over to you.
If you,
If I can